The Life Outdoors radio show with Nate Bailey. Everything you need to know about hunting Southern Oregon. Wake the wild within.
Welcome to the Life Outdoors radio show. And before we get into the show this week, let's talk a little bit about the Life Outdoors. If you want to know more about what we do, you can go to the lifeoutdoors.org. That's the Life Outdoors with a Z on the end.org. And it'll show you exactly everything that we do, from the film festivals to the Outdoors Guild to the forum to our adventure trips. Everything is captured over there on the lifeoutdoors.org. We also, part of our mission is to get you guys outdoors. We believe that if you go outdoors, you're going to see something more of yourself and something more of God. And that is our mission, is to get you out there so you can see that. So part of that mission is we try to give you tips and tricks to make it to where you can get out and you can get after your outdoor pursuits, and it would be something that's fruitful. We know how hard it is for people to get started in the outdoors. We know that it can be a real bummer to get out there and just not have success for 2, 3, 5, 10 trips. So we're trying to help you get success from the beginning. And the way that we're doing this is by bringing you our tips and tricks. And all you have to do is go to the lifeoutdoors.org, hit the contacts tab at the website, leave us a note, and we will get back to you email you back some of our tips and tricks. And they are seasonal, so they will go with what we're doing during the season and the stuff that we're seeing outdoors. This week's tips and tricks will be with turkey hunting, and not just any kind of turkey hunting, but mountain turkeys in the public land. If you really want to experience the turkey hunting the way that our ancestors did, I think this public land turkey hunting is probably something that you've never experienced before. And we're going to give you some tips on how to find those birds, how to finish those birds, how to decipher which bird to go after, and all those things that we've learned by chasing these buglers of the spring. That's what we like to call them, because it's a lot like elk hunting. So with that said, go over to lifeoutdoors.org, send us some contact information, or sign up to be a site member. And if you're a site member, we send out tips and tricks every month on our Life Outdoors site members. We call it the inner circle. So that's what we're doing over at the Life Outdoors. We're trying to get you guys into the woods and find success. This turkey season has been special, you guys. It's been one where I've committed myself to doing more in the public lands, and it's been so much harder. Don't get me wrong. There's something to be said about a well-managed turkey hunting area and being able to be around a lot of birds gobbling, and be able to watch a lot of birds and be selective in the birds that you take. But at the same time, chasing birds on public land creates all sorts of new and different, I don't know, it's just like two different types of hunts. One, you're ambushing birds where you know what they're going to do. Two, you're trying to keep up with birds and trying to get in front of them. This year was no exception for me. I was a part early on of several birds going down, being able to find birds, help people, go up and get those birds. And then also, being able to guide people into birds, calling birds for people. But this last weekend, I was able to go out and hunt for myself. And well, let's put it this way. I've been hunting, not just this last weekend, but I've been hunting the same area for the same bird since the opener, and we're now into May 2nd. And it's been pretty amazing to see how these birds are reacting. Well, this one, I knew where he roosted from way before opening day. I've seen this bird interacting, and I know what he was doing. And he had so many hens with him, he was super hard to get a hold of. And the first time we got into him, we absolutely blew him out. We were coming up the road, and there's this little section of little freestanding thickets, and then they were lined with cedar and fir and oak, and then around the edges of them, so they were kind of like around the edge of a beautiful little prairie, and it's kind of, like a 5-acre prairie, and there were several of those. And then these birds, what they would do is they get into and strut there. You could actually see the strut zones inside where they were wearing down the grass on the inside, and it was really cool to see all that. But at the same time, it made it super hard to try to get on the birds. What we do when we're in the public lands is we'll go through and we'll um, typically try to ride the roads with our bikes, and then just kind of set some some hen yelps out there, or even use some locators like with my goose calls or an owl call or something like that, and try to locate these birds. In the evenings, you could locate them, they're going back to roost, or in the mornings, they're up on their roost. Well, this guy, we were coming back, we'd hunted the one side. We didn't realize that this bird was moving through those little pockets. He was moving with a bunch of hens. And so we'd get him going with a hen yelp, and he would be gobbling at us, and we'd move in closer on him and try. One of the things that I found out is if you got to try to get around to the front of them, because they're moving a certain direction, and it's hard to call an animal backwards. If they've already been there, unless they're really juiced up and you're really pushing on them and you're the one making them move, it's hard to call them backwards, even with an elk. I like to get in front of them. And so, but one of the ways you have to get in front of them is you got to be able to call and see which direction they're going. So when they answer you, if they answer you further away, then they're moving away from you. And then one of the things that I like to do at that point is, if they're moving away, is I try to get up and around and get in front of them, and keep my calls to a minimum until I think that I've made it around. Well, we came into the bottom, and we're yelping our way up through there, and we get up to a place where the turkey is sitting inside, these little prairies, and he's doing his strutting, and he's going back and forth, and we give him that call, and he finally answers us with a gobble. And man, when these toms have a lot of hens around them, they really don't gobble as much. They don't have to. Gobbling is a thing for a turkey to kind of, one, it's they're getting, excited, but two, it's a way for them to communicate to the hens, and they're used to the hens coming to them. And so as he, if he had 10 hens with him, he's just strutting and he's spitting and he's trying to attract their attention. He doesn't need any more hens. So a lot of times they don't gobble in that situation. So I was just happy to get him to gobble, and I'm thinking, I tried to pinpoint where he's at, and it's really hard. Mountain birds are really hard because the acoustics up there moves the sound around. So especially in this advanced kind of habitat, in this habitat that is really diverse. So you have a creek bed, and then you'll have those open, oaks and savannas, and then that moves into the cedars and the timber. And so the sound just gets pushed around so weird in there that it's really hard to understand some of what's going on when you're trying to get after these birds. So that was what was going on. And we get up and we're pushing close, and we keep pushing close, and he's gobbling and gobbling, and we get in, and inevitably there's hens sitting there, and they take off and they pull that tom right along with them. He never saw us, but he's going from place to place. And so there's 3 of us, and we're trying to get around. And so my only idea was to back out and try to get in front of him. So we did. We backed out. I got up to the road, and we're booking it, trying to get around in front of him. And the problem with the same thing, with this diverse habitat and with these open prairies, is when you go across, man, some of the prairies are more open than others, and you're trying to get around, and birds, turkeys, these turkeys that live up in these areas, they have to deal with all sorts of different types of predators, and they know how to watch for you. And that's exactly what happened. We got out, we got pushing around, and that bird saw us coming around, and they were waiting in that prairie to see if we would come through there. And that's exactly what we did. And the game was over that day. Well, this happened 2 or 3 more times. I decided one day I was going to get up there before he goes to bed and get him as he's going to the roost. And I knew where he's going to roost, and I knew kind of the timelines that he was roosting in. And so when he started making his way up towards the roost. I thought, well, I'll just get up there and get in front of him. And sure enough, I drove right into the spot where I knew that he was headed to. And I thought I was probably, a half an hour in front of him before he went to roost. Well, nope. That day he was on the roost. he was right there. I drove in and he was looking at me right there. He was standing, waiting to get up on the roost. And so that day was wasted. The other day I went up there and I sat down in front of them and I got a decoy out, and he came in and looked at the decoy and turned around. I think he got used to my calls. So it was pretty disheartening this whole time, is trying to beat this bird out. And I had 5 interactions with this guy until finally, I'll tell you the whole story about that. But 5 interactions, and I learned so much through these interactions. One of the things is when he started to see me, it started getting bad enough that he was looking for me whenever I'd call, and he'd get into a spot where he could see me. And then if he saw, and turkeys, I don't know if you guys have ever been around these kind of turkeys that get really smart to this stuff, but they look like snakes in the woods when they really are looking for you. They'll hide behind things and then move their heads around and look over and through brush. And it looks like little snakes looking down there. You have to be real keyed on to movement. And I was, I'm used to a lot of different turkeys, but I wasn't used to these guys that were keying on to you like 200 yards away. And it got to be where I'd come in and he'd be sitting as I call. I'd come around and I thought I gave him plenty of room. In other areas that I've hunted turkeys, I gave him a lot of room. But this was, in these, he could barely see me really where I was at. And he would be sitting around and peeking around this brush. And he'd be even 200 yards. One time he caught me at 200 yards. And rather than running off, these turkeys, one of their, probably the major defense that made so many turkeys there is they'd fly off and get into a tree. And he flew across the creek and then got up in a really tall ponderosa pine. They love, there's some trees up there that they love, they're ponderosa pines. And he got up in there and he sat up on top of that tree and watched me go by. And this happened to me several times, and it was getting so aggravating. I didn't think I was going to be able to get this bird. Matter of fact, I have some really good friends that are really good turkey hunters, and they actually got on this bird once, like opening weekend, and he put the slip to them too. Opening weekend, he had so many hens. That's probably why, but he put the slip on them too. So this bird had put the slip on several people, and it's getting aggravating because it's a bird. For goodness sake, you think, man, oh man, these are turkeys. I've seen turkeys do some really stupid things, and yet he's making me look like I didn't have a clue as to what I was doing out there in the woods. And it was pretty interesting. I really enjoyed the fact that he was that way, but at the same time, there was part of me that was starting to burn inside because I really was trying to get after this bird. And, after the 3rd time, it really started getting after me. And I spent almost 2 weeks chasing this one bird, and I could have gone and found different birds and probably filled all 3 of my tags. But there's something inside of you when, or there should be, when going gets tough, you really want to persevere and get through it. If I gave up on that bird, it would have stuck with me forever. And those are the kind of things that build on top of other things. And we don't want to do that in life. We don't want to give in on things just because it starts getting hard, right? And then I talked to another friend of mine who he's a big time elk hunter, not as much of a turkey hunter. And as I was telling him the story and stuff, he's kind of rolling his eyes because he's like, man, I've been around so many big elk that I've had to deal with. And you're talking about a bird. You're acting like this bird is like supernatural or something. And I could almost, as I was talking to him, I could almost hear his eyes rolling through the phone. And rightfully so, right? Because if you've been around turkeys, yeah, they're smart. Yeah, they got some sense of trying to get through and trying to live. But I tell you what, these mountain birds that are up in the woods and up in this area are so much different. They're such a different bird they're such a different animal that there's 100% wildness in them, and they know how to get away from predators. And he was bagging me on every front. So when we get back here from the break, I'm going to tell you the story of how that day went down. The day that I finally got the timber ghost.
Hunting Southern Oregon. The Life Outdoors radio show on Gold Country Radio with Nate Bailey. Keep it tuned right here for more ways to perfect your craft. Coming up next, Wake the Wild Within.
Want to get your business noticed? Sponsor a show on KKFO Gold Country Radio on 103.3 FM and create awareness through on-air announcements, our online stream at goldcountryradio.org, and our podcasts that live on forever. Your message reaches a broad local audience while also targeting listeners who choose to tune in to the shows they love. Plus, we promote your sponsorship across our website and social media. For more information, email goldcountryradio@gmail.com. Call 541-238-6989 or visit goldcountryradio.org. Gold Country Radio, your message heard locally and beyond.
The Life Outdoors radio show with Nate Bailey. Everything you need to know about hunting Southern Oregon. Wake the Wild Within.
Welcome back from the break. And I want to also remind you again that go over to the lifeoutdoors.org and send us some contact, and I'll send you our tips and tricks about getting on these mountain birds. Before you do that though, I have to warn you, it gets in your blood. You know, a lot of people kind of laugh at turkey hunting and stuff like that, but if you're an avid elk hunter or any kind of avid hunter where you like to interact with animals, if you go out and you start doing this mountain turkey hunting and you start doing it on public lands, it'll get in your blood. It'll make you become obsessed with them. That's what happened with me. So I'd hunted the same area 20, 30 years ago. Let me see. I'd say 25 years ago. My son, Gage, who you probably have heard or seen if you follow the Life Outdoors at all, he's on it quite a bit. He was just a young guy when I started hunting this stuff, and I would take him up there and he would ride on my shoulders as we're trying to find turkeys in the same area. So, you know, there's some history here, but man, you know, with young kids, we'd hear a lot of gobbles and we'd see turkeys running away, but we really didn't get into a lot of turkeys because, you know, just having young kids trying to chase mountain birds. So when we started turkey hunting, we would go to blinds and go down lower where, you know, we could just ambush turkeys, and that works really well with younger people. It works real well. It's a fun way to hunt turkeys as well. But the mountain birds got into my skin, and this year especially because we just ran into quite a few turkeys up there, so we started hunting them, and it even made me go get a different shotgun because the shotgun I have, you know, is my duck gun, and I have a real long barrel, and of course I could put a turkey choke in it, but I just decided, and I had a couple friends that came up and they were chasing these birds around, and they had these little Steven turkey guns, and they make them in a 20 gauge and they make them in a 410, and it's made just for that TSS tungsten super shot, and which hits really hard. I would probably not killed that turkey if it wasn't for the fact that I was shooting the tungsten. But anyhow, I went out and even bought this new shotgun. It's a single shot and it's a teeny tiny gun, and we call it Little Banger. Anyhow, I bought it just for chasing mountain birds. And one day that we were out, we chased, in 2 days time, I put on 28 miles chasing these birds. And that's not like I was going 28 miles in deep on something. It was just because I was following them around and trying to get in front, kept trying to get in front. And we probably did that in a 5 mile range. So they're putting on 28 miles in a 5 mile range is pretty crazy when you think about it. And that's all filled with, you know, interactions with turkeys and trying to talk to them and try to get in front of them and things like that. So it's amazing how many miles we put on. And so having that little shotgun, of course, made life a lot easier. than packing around a big old heavy shotgun. So that's kind of the reason that these little Stevens models are catching on. So this was Friday, so this would have been May 2nd, I think, that I finally caught up with that bird again. And my idea was I was going to get up there in the morning, get up there before dark or before light, and get in there and get in front of that turkey. Now, I knew his hens were roosting in a tree below where I wanted to go, but he was roosting right in around, he roosted right in, majority of the time, he was roosting right in around, some of those green open fields. And so I thought if I got in between him and his hens and put out a hen decoy, then I could, he could probably oversee my call. And maybe I don't know if turkeys remember calls or not, but I even switched up my mouth call to make sure that I didn't sound like I was sounding. And I got in between them. And so I went down there, I got in early, drove in, and I saw his hens. They were roosted up. In the tree that I almost drove right underneath them. And it really didn't bother me. They knew I was there, but it really didn't bother me because I knew that, he was going to come looking for them in the morning. And he still had, this is in May, and he still had active hens. So these hens, weren't leaving him and weren't leaving him behind and weren't nesting. They were still out and about. So that means that, we're in a year where things are going to be a little bit longer. And normally turkey season, by the time second week rolls around, is starting to wind down. Well, now it's just starting to wind up. And that's kind of how our spring's been. We've had a late winter. So I think that's really what's holding back a lot of what's going on in the turkey woods. And I think that's going to probably affect the elk woods too. But anyhow, I get down there, I make my way down, try to sneak in as quiet as I could. And I get that decoy set out, and I get behind a tree and I'm waiting there. And I start giving a few hen yelps, just like I'm a hen that's still on the branch. And a lot of times they'll yelp and stuff before they come down out of the roost. And he would just start going off. He'd gobble and gobble and gobble. And I could tell he was on the roost still, and he was gobbling. And I thought, it's done. It's done. He's going to come right across. I knew where he was crossing. I've been in there several times. So I've been hunting the same turkey for 2 weeks. I could see his path and where he'd been going through there. And, so I got in front of him, and I thought this is over. We got it handled. And, I'm going to finally get the timber ghost, the guy that's been eluding me and making me look like a fool for 2 weeks now. I am going to probably get, and I was feeling really, really good. And I was getting kind of like, oh, this is already done. I don't know if you guys have ever been there before, but that's not a good place to be when you're in the woods, because you probably will get humbled. And I'm sitting there and I'm yelping, and he's gobbling, and I'm yelping, and he's gobbling, and I'm thinking, oh man. And I'm getting him worked up in when he's up on the roost. If you get a gobbler worked up on the roost, when they hit the ground, dude, they are looking for hens. And that's what I was doing. I was just sitting there and yelping at him and purring and giving him, and he just thought that was he was buying in, right? And I hear him blam, hit the ground, and right as he hit the ground, and as he's coming, and I could hear it, and he's gobbling and gobbling, coming closer to me, and he's got to cover a couple of those from where he roost. And I did this on purpose because I didn't expect anybody to be up there. Two, I wanted to be far enough away from him that if I did spook the hens out off of the roost, it wasn't going to affect him, because the way a lot of the turkeys, when they still have a lot of hens, roost in this area, is they'll roost in several different trees. And as he comes down, he'll start walking towards where the hens are roosting. And as he gets close to them, they'll fly down and kind of join the pack, right? And they'll fly down as he comes to us. So I wanted to make sure if I was going to scare some hens off, I'd be quite a ways away from him, so he'd still have some hens, and he'd still do the same thing that he'd been doing for the last 2 weeks. I didn't want to screw any of that up. So it's happening, man. I hear hens flying down, cluck, 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 and they're all just cackling. Everything's going on around me. And I'm just sitting there and I'm waiting, and I know it's probably going to be a good 15-20 minutes of him. That's just kind of how turkeys move. If you ever watch chickens, turkeys are a lot like them. They just amble their way through things. They're not like elk do this too, and people don't realize that these animals move. They really don't need to go anywhere. They're living where they want to live, so they're eating where they want to eat. It's kind of like us walking back and forth from the kitchen to our bedroom or our bathrooms or excuse me, or our living room. They're doing what they do, and we're just along there for the ride. A lot of times we think that they have these missions and they just get out and that's not how the wild places work. They do get on missions when you start spooking them, or if there's a lot of pressure, or if there's something else pushing them, if there's another elk or a bull that's got them messed up. But normally they're just moving along there. And so I'm just giving him some hints, letting him know that I'm over there, and trying to steer him as he's walking towards me, towards my direction. That's the best way that I've ever found to call an animal is be in their way, and then just kind of call them to you and steer them to you. I do it with ducks, I do it with elk, I do it with deer, and I do it with turkeys. And it works the same every time. Anyhow, as he's coming towards me, I hear whoa, and I hear this truck coming up, and it's like 6:15. The sun is up, not up. It's risen. It's there's been 15 minutes of shooting light already, and here comes this big loud pickup, and I hear it come up right to almost where he was roosted. So it's just behind where he's at now, and I hear it stop, and I hear door slam, and I hear yep, 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 with a box call. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you guys, that turkey heard you drive up, and then he knows where you're at, and then you're going to yelp with a box call off the road. Now, I have done this kind of thing, but I do it off of a bike, or I walk the roads and try to locate. But locating out your pickup sometimes works. You'll get a shot gobble, but just because you get a shot gobble means that those turkeys know that something is up because they heard that car coming, and they will shot gobble, and they'll let you know that they're there. But if you're chasing them off of a shot gobble, a lot of times they're already on the defensive, and they're going to be hiding before you ever get to them, and they're going to be real suspicious of that hen call. And not only that, it really makes them smart to hen calls, and they'll just stop gobbling. Anyhow, he comes up, and that turkey and he keeps doing it, and that turkey flies out on the ridge, and I'm thinking, oh great, that turkey is up on the ridge now. So I pull out, and the guy sees me, and he's like, oh, you can tell he's like, oh man, you're in my spot, is basically what he was looking at. He wasn't too concerned about, he just screwed up that turkey. He didn't really know that turkey was even there, honestly. And so I went back up, drove all the way around the ridge, and I know where this turkey goes. So I got up on top of the ridge, and half an hour later, I'm hiking in and getting on top of the ridge, and I know where he crosses up there. So I get up there in front of him, and sure enough, I give him a hen, and sure enough, I hear, and I know it's him. So I get up on top, and I walk into this. There's another little green spot in there, and I know that they're probably in there picking around. And I walk in, and there's this hen just picking around in there, and I'm thinking, oh man, he's got to be right here then, right? So I sit on that hen, and I'm sitting and watching her, and I watch her for a half an hour, and she's just running around picking. And I didn't want to give him any calls because he's already been messed with several times. He heard me down below. He's heard me for 2 weeks, and that hen's there. I thought he'd just show up. Well, he never did. So I finally, after a half an hour of watching this hen, I decided, well, I'm calling. So I did. I called, and he caught me off. And he was just 50 yards away from that hen. So I gave him some sweet purrs and started scratching the ground, and he comes in, and I can't tell that he's right there, but I could hear him spitting. He never did gobble again, but he walked in and he's just spitting. And then I look over, and sure enough, there's his white and blue head just changing. He's in full strut, spitting, scratching the ground, looking for me. And he's looking for that hen. And that other hen, she was like getting away out of his way. She was probably already bred, and she was probably already on the nest. and she was probably giving him the cold shoulder all morning, but he's walking, and so I raise up a little banger, and it's a Stevens, and so I had an H&R single shot, and you pull the hammer back and you just pull the trigger and it fires. It had no safety. Well, the Stevens has a safety, and I pulled the hammer back when he gobbled that first time, and I put it on safe. So I pull, and I pull up on it, and I get him in the little red dot. His head's right there, and I pull the trigger, and the hammer falls down, but it falls down halfway. And in all the excitement, I didn't realize that I left it on, because the safety will let the hammer go down, but it only goes halfway. It won't let it strike the primer. And so I'm just crazy thinking, what the heck happened? And I thought that I dropped some shells in the creek like 2 days before that. And I thought maybe one of those shells was a dud because of that. So I'm digging in and I'm trying to find it. And I see this turkey now. He's starting to look around. You know, the mountain ghost is like, got me again. And then I realized, oh no, I had it on safe. So I pull the hammer back again, take it off of safe, realign. And by this time he's getting ready to run, and he's looking around in his head, and his head shoots up, and I place that little red bead right on his head, pull the hammer, and that TSS at 35 yards shooting through the brush, just put him down right then and there. And so he made it through 5 times with me, but he didn't make it through the 6th. And it just feels good to be able to be around a bird that's of such quality, and then to be able to get him. And you guys, if you want to see this bird, go over to thelifeoutdoors.org, check out the blog, and you can see the bird, and you can see some of the things that I went through to try to get this bird. I'll post a bunch of stuff up there, but I'm hoping that you guys enjoy these stories, and I hope it enlightens something in you, makes you want to get out there and see more of God, because I'll tell you what, one of God's coolest animals is the wild turkey. And if you start chasing them, you're going to see something of God. And that's our hope, is to try to get you out there so you can see this stuff. And I'm up with all my time here now, but tune in, go over to the blog and see some more. And we're going to put this out on the YouTube channel as well. So I hope you guys like this. I hope it's inspiring you. I hope it's motivating you to live and to get out, and keep tuning in, and you're going to hear more of this. But until then, just go out there and keep on living.
Thanks for listening to the Life Outdoors radio show. Tune in next Sunday evening at 7 p.m. to continue to hone the primitive skills that man has always been meant to master. Hunting, Southern Oregon. The Life Outdoors radio show with Nate Bailey. Wake the wild within.